Hello, and welcome to Grand Canyon Youth's River Tales event. I'm Emma Wharton, the Executive Director of Grand Canyon Youth and one of your hosts tonight.
Hey folks, I'm Garrison Garcia, the host of the Flagstaff Foundry, and your other host this evening.
Excellent. What a year it's been, huh, Garrison?
Emma, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, folks, you know how you look forward to a river trip for so long, and you get all your stuff together, and then you get a flat on the way out to the put-in? That's what 2020 has been, a little bit. Whether it's been, name anything that's been going on in 2020. It's been tough, I think, no matter who you are.
Absolutely. And on this historical night, we're so grateful that you have joined us. Normally, this weekend, we are 600 people strong, packed at the Coconino Center for the Arts, celebrating youth, community, and rivers. Tonight, we're going to do something a little bit different.
A little bit more intimate.
A little bit more intimate.
Y'all have joined us from your living rooms, from your phones, in your cozy pajamas. It's a nice print, by the way. We're here with a very small crew in the Grand Canyon Youth Warehouse, making do, live streaming into your home. So thanks for having us.
So here's what's going to happen a little bit tonight. We thought that a good way to do this event would be to have stories and people sharing stories. And so we put a call out to our community and said, who's interested in telling us a story on the theme of adventure? And again, it's been an adventurous year, so it felt like a fitting theme. A little bit of a spoiler alert. They're not all about rivers.
Maybe a misnomer, but they're all about adventure. They're all about going into the unknown, being brave, taking risks, taking chances, and coming out on the other end.
Absolutely. And I just want to thank our storytellers so much for stepping out of their comfort zones, taking a risk, and recording their stories in this new and kind of different format. And so we'll also have testimonials from some of our participants and others who care about GCY.
We really hope that tonight's stories inspire you, move you, maybe even move you to contribute.
Absolutely. So in case you have forgotten, this is a fundraiser. And what I am over the moon to report tonight is that we are already $7,000 on the way to our $10,000 goal. What? And that is all through contributions from you all who registered for this event. Thank you so, so much. So our goal, we only have $3,000 left to raise. And you can help us do that by going to our website, gcyouth.org, or text GCY on the number that's on your screen. And if you want to get really fancy, we even have Venmo available if you use the text to give option.
That's right. Grand Canyon Youth using the youth option, Venmo. How are we going to represent those donations tonight, Emma?
Well, we wanted to do something, kind of apropos to what we like to do. So we've got these blueberries, as we like to call them at GCY, and each of these represent some of the donations that we're getting in. So we are going to try and load the boat with donations tonight. And we've already got a few bags in the boat to represent how far we've gotten.
So folks, if you want to fill this boat with blueberries, just hop on either of those options to donate to Grand Canyon Youth and help us pack it with bags.
Absolutely. And all of your donations are going to help Grand Canyon Youth to make it through this really challenging year and be a bright spot in the future. So thanks so much in advance for your support and all the support you've already given. Should we get ready to tell some stories?
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's go to our first storyteller. Katie King is a director, writer, actor, and mother, and can be found at facebook.com/Katie King American Sayer. She would like to escape to a particular tea house and art gallery in Telluride. Give it up in your own home for Katie King.
I read a book called Bloomability by Sharon Creech. And in it, the little girl, Denny the Dot, gets to travel to Switzerland. I think they describe it as her being kidnapped by her aunts. Her family was going through some rough times and she needed to get away from home. And she went to a school called the American School in Switzerland. And she had many experiences there. When I was 16, I got an opportunity to go to the same school because of the book that I had read and because of an essay that I had written about how it had touched my life and how I related to the main character. On one of the field trips, when I was a junior in high school, when I was 16, we got to go to Zermatt, Switzerland for a ski trip. I was a skier and my friend Eva was a snowboarder. But we happened to have the same shoe size. So while going down the run, halfway through, Eva said, "Have you ever wanted to try snowboarding?" And I said, "No, but it's free because we can just switch and it's easy. So let's try it." We had a great time that day. And I remember sitting on the hill with Eva. And I remember entering the ski area and some people that were working at the ski area said, "Do you want a map?" And we said, "No, we don't need a map. We're pretty good skiers or snowboarders. We know what we're doing." And so we didn't take one. I remember as the day was ending, sitting on the hill with Eva and watching the sunset over the mountain peaks, the snow, the silence, the beauty. I remember taking the chairlift down and thinking, there's nowhere else in the entire world that I would ever want to be than right here. As we got off the chairlift, there was a sign that said, "Welcome to Cervinia." Oh, Cervinia was in Italy, and where we had started out was, like I said, Zermatt, Switzerland. If you're able to get on Google right now, Google Maps, you can see how close they are. This is one of several ski areas that shares a border with another country within the mountain slopes. So we get down to Cervinia and we say, "Whoops, this is not where we wanted to be. We want to go back to Zermatt." And they said, "We're sorry. We can't take you there. The chairlift is closed." And we said, "Okay, that's fine. We'll get in some kind of cab and we'll go back." And they said, "No, the chairlift is the only way to get back." Well, I was just laughing and laughing and laughing because that is how some people release their stress. I also thought it was kind of a hilarious situation that we unknowingly ended up in a completely different country. Well, it all started becoming more clear as we realized we hadn't brought a map with us. And some of the runs had flags, Italian flags next to the runs, and some of them had Swiss flags. Now we got it. But we were in a little bit of an Italian pickle. So I called my mom on a payphone and I said, "Mom, I ended up in Italy tonight and I'm supposed to be in Switzerland." And she said, "Tell me something I don't know," and hung up the phone. So she really felt like I could just figure it out on my own, which we did. We called the school and they had a very nice family that came and picked us up. We were rather embarrassed. And they gave us a nice dinner and told us to be more responsible next time. So the next morning we woke up, we skied right to the entrance because that's all we were, just two 16-year-old girls with nothing but the boots on our feet and the skis or snowboard on our boots. We didn't have any of our money with us. We didn't have our passports, and we had crossed the border without knowing it. So when we got back, boy, did we have a few stories to tell. And did we feel a little bit silly about not taking our maps with us? And that was maybe a lesson for our pride. But we had probably skied a little bit further than our classmates had that day. And thankfully, we were safe and warm and fed. And we figured it out with the help of the school. So that is my adventure story. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of these stories for this storytelling event. Thank you to Emma, who put this on and also has provided me with some of my favorite adventures from around the same age. Thank you.
I love that expression that Katie used, an Italian pickle. Emma, have you ever been in an Italian pickle, ended up somewhere at the end of your adventure that you didn't plan out to go?
I think I've had that in a few rapids from time to time.
Yeah, I've been in an Italian pickle on Crystal, I think.
Absolutely.
Ending up in that hole on the river left, trying to take that left run. Definitely an Italian pickle for me.
Little bit of an adventure.
Yeah. Thanks to Katie King for that story. Helping Grand Canyon youth through the adventure that is 2020 are some of our sponsors.
Yep, we could not do this event without the help of our sponsors, and we have got NARBA Institute, National Bank of Arizona, Knackered Pepsi, Benefit and Financial Strategies, Mountain View Pediatrics, Wildland Trekking, Alliance Bank of Arizona, and Babbitt's Backcountry Outfitters. Thank you so much for your support.
Thanks, folks. Emma, what has Grand Canyon Youth been up to this year?
Where do I start? So it started back in March, and we were thinking on getting ready for our biggest season yet. We had over 80 expeditions on the calendar set to serve over 1,000 youth. We had just finished field staff training, and we were ready to go. We had purchased brand new boats in order to meet the capacity. And then the pandemic hit, and we made the excruciating decision to cancel our season out of concern for the health and safety of our youth participants, their families, our staff, volunteers, and the community. And so we took a deep breath and we were sad. It was a really, really rough time. We love what we do. And then we refunded $106,000 in expedition payments because we knew that families might rely on those few $100 because of economic hardship. And we also had some families who were able to donate those deposits back to Grand Canyon Youth. And for that, we were grateful. So then what did we do? We do what you do a lot of times on a river trip when the unexpected happens, like your kitchen blows over in a windstorm or someone grabs the camp that you wanted. We kind of took stock for a minute, and then we just said, we're going to make the best of this. And so we put together an operations strategy to be mission-driven, focused, and relevant. And we got to work. And I would love to take this opportunity to deeply thank the staff at Grand Canyon Youth. 100% of them have contributed financially to the organization this year, despite all of us taking pay cuts of 15 to 25% and having to work a little bit less as well. So just so much great gratitude for them. Also, what a great opportunity. We always are saying we don't have time to tweak this system or do this project because we're always running programs and expeditions and getting kids outside. And so we took this pause to refine some systems, whether that was our database or launching our blog, so that we can share the stories of what we do at GCY a little bit more. We also worked with our board of directors and our health advisory task force and are working with them now to put together a robust COVID-19 management plan so that we are ready when we are going to be running expeditions in 2021. Don't worry, we didn't forget about the youth. We really wanted to continue to stay engaged with them as much as possible. So we did what a lot of organizations did and went virtual. We did an author spotlight. We did a pandemic pickup event, and we reviewed some leave no trace principles that youth could use while they were outside recreating, because goodness knows that's how we stayed sane this year so far. We also were able to work with a couple of our collaborators to really connect and get youth outside. And hey, Garrison, do you want to kind of tell us a little bit about that?
I sure do, Emma. I mentioned at the start of the show that I'm the host of the Flagstaff Foundry, but I'm also a therapist for kids and youth in the community. And in partnering with Grand Canyon Youth in 2019, we went on the first river trip that our company had. It was a great opportunity. We had some wonderful kids, wonderful experiences, and just great times all around. We're really excited to do that again in 2020. Well, we all know how 2020 went, and we were really bummed that we weren't going to be able to get out on the river again with the youth that we serve. But then Grand Canyon Youth gave a call and said, we still want to do something. What could we do? How could we support youth in our community? And in collaboration with Cosmic Cycles, we decided that we'd go on some mountain bike expeditions. So utilizing Grand Canyon Youth's expertise, helping us out in logistics and other ways, we were able to access some resources for mountain bike rentals and go on some great trips with youth in our community, right in our backyard, while still keeping safe related to COVID. It was a great experience, and we were really thankful to partner with Grand Canyon Youth in that way.
Excellent. Thanks, Garrison. So where are we going now? There's still a lot of uncertainty about what the future holds, but we are excited to try new things and to implement some of these protocols that we have been developing. And more than anything, we are really excited to connect youth to the rivers and canyons in the Southwest and continue to deepen the impact that we know that our program has on the next generation. How can you help? Again, I just need to say thank you to everyone who has donated up to this point. We lost over 50% of our revenue this year and have really been running on a very tight budget. And even with that, we rely on donations like yours to help us to make it through these hard times. So thank you. Please consider making a donation tonight to help us get to our goal. And I think we have an update, Garrison.
Ooh,
Oh yeah.
What do we got? It's time to load the boat, folks. I think in our last, over the break, and by break I mean the last story, you all have donated $300, meaning we're going to throw another blueberry into the boat.
Woot, woot, load the boat.
All right.
There we go.
We want a mountain in here by the end of the show, folks, and I think we can do it with your help.
Excellent. Thanks. All right, should we go to the next story?
Let's do it.
Excellent. All right. The next storyteller is Sienna Bransky. And Sienna is a GCY alumna, educator, mom of two, and a writer whenever possible. Born and raised in Flagstaff, she met her husband on a GCY trip, and they often can be found exploring Southwest canyons with their children, who are amazing, by the way. Here is Sienna Bransky telling her story.
Hi, I'm Tina. When Emma Wharton approached me to tell a story for this event, I actually had a pretty hard time deciding what story to tell. I feel like generally the most riveting adventure stories are the ones that follow a formula like, I made bad decisions and it went badly. And I didn't want to tell a story like that. I mean, they're very exciting and fun to listen to, but I believe in preparedness and approaching an adventure with a sense of respect and responsibility. Unfortunately, the story that was really tugging at my heart and wanting to be told is this one, and it does involve quite a bit of recklessness. So here we go. When I was in high school, I worked with plants. It was a small nursery. I didn't know anything about plants. Like, I couldn't answer people's questions, and I couldn't work the cash register. It was ancient. Like, it could print receipts, and that was about it. I had to do the math, and I could not do the math. It was awful. So I worked in the greenhouse mostly, and I just loved it there. I loved the way that the greenhouse smelled, and I loved watching things grow and the tenderness of seedlings, and I'd lose whole hours just transplanting things. And I also eventually I made friends with one of my coworkers. He was staggeringly knowledgeable. He could answer all the questions and he could do all the math. It was one of those friendships that was also just really pleasantly uncomplicated. Neither of us had any ulterior motives. He had a car and I didn't, and that's really where it all started. He'd just give me rides places, but then eventually we also discovered some mutual interests. So we would spend our days transplanting and talking about dorky fantasy novels, and then on our days off, we would drive out to the canyons and do hikes that we were woefully ill-prepared for. So that was great. That's how my high school summers went by. Until one June, there was a fungus in the greenhouse, and that thing was a plague. We did absolutely everything we could to get rid of it. We tried fungicide and carefully underwatering everything. We sanitized everything. We tried, and it was just killing probably thousands of dollars worth of merchandise. So after a while, the boss was pretty irritated with the whole situation. He walked into the greenhouse one day. He accused me of overwatering. I think he accused my friend of underwatering. And he told us both, don't come back next week. And we were sad. I had hoped to keep that job through college. I had hoped to save enough money that summer to take a GCY trip. I had hoped to someday move out of my parents' house. And my friend, I'm sure, had much bigger worries than I did. He was like an actual adult. He had student loans to pay off. He had rent, and his nearest family members were somewhere south of the border. So we were sad and stressed out, and we decided to do something reckless to take our minds off of it. We packed 2 liters of water, 1 flashlight, a couple of cotton sweatshirts, and a handful of Rice Krispie treats, and took off to hike Mount Humphreys at 6:30 at night. A hike that neither one of us had done before. A hike, for those of you who don't know, is the tallest mountain in our state. So, recklessness. But it was beautiful. We stepped into those dark woods and just inhaled this big, hopeful gulp of pungent pine. And the moon was full, but it was sort of distant and dim anyway. And there's just this sort of magic that happens when you walk with a good friend in the dark on a mountainside, when you can talk about things that normally are obscured in your conversations, when you feel all bogged down by eye contact. It's just us and the mountain and this big adventure. We told ghost stories until we were jumpy and delirious, and we would talk about sorts of things that you're normally not comfortable talking about, like generational trauma and what your actual worries are, where your actual heart actually is, and the things like that sort of clarity that you can reach in a conversation when you're on the side of a mountain in the dark with a good friend. And we had no way of knowing how far we'd gone. We didn't bring any way to tell time. We had never done a hike before. We were such inexperienced hikers, we didn't even have like a sense of distance. I remember being like, oh, we must have gone miles and miles. And they're like 1 mile into it, maybe. So it took a long time. And eventually we stepped up onto one of the first false summits, and we were just in this world of stars. It was like stepping onto another planet. The ribbon of the Milky Way across the middle of the sky, and the tiny full moon off in the distance, sinking towards the horizon. Everything that we'd been worried about was left in an alternate reality far below us. And we kept hiking. It was very dark and very cold, and the air was thin, and the hiking was hard. And eventually we made it to the summit, and we were like, we gotta get out of here. So we started scampering back down as quickly as we could, and immediately lost the trail. Up there above the tree line, it's all just rock. and we couldn't see the little cairns or the trail signs, so we had no way of knowing where the trail was. Our only clue how to get down was that we knew what side of the mountain we'd come up, and we knew that as long as we could see the moon, we were on the right side of the mountain. But the moon was sinking ever towards that horizon, and our one flashlight was getting dimmer and dimmer. And after what felt like forever scrambling down rocky scree slopes, the flashlight went out, and we were in very thick woods, just tripping over all these fallen logs. And we stumbled around through that woods for hours, it must have been, until eventually we found a clearing and stepped out into it. But it wasn't the grassy meadow we were expecting. My friend stepped into it and fell through it. It was just carpeted in fallen logs, and it was rutted by heavy machinery. It was a new ski run that had recently been clear cut, and stepping out into it was like walking from an enchanted forest into an apocalypse. And so then we were just stumbling through these holes and branches, and my friend twisted his ankle, and he spent most of the rest of that night limping. Eventually, we found our way to one of the older ski runs that was a clearer path downward. And we found our way down to the ski resort, and then eventually down to the trailhead as the sun was coming up. And we were a little bit sad. After all that trying to find a way down, we were sad to leave the sanctuary of that midnight mountain universe and the peace that we had found there. And that was one of the last adventures I did with my friend. He lost his life to addiction shortly after that, and I will always feel his absence in the Midnight Mountain universe and when I can't identify a plant. And right now, for many of us, our sanctuaries are somewhat out of reach, and our friends are distant. And this year has been a hard one. But just remember to tell your friends that you love them, and the mountains will be there for us to find again.
Hi, I'm Kat. I've been a scientist on GCY trips, and my favorite thing about these trips is the amazing bonds that you form with people so quickly. I think when you're out there without your cell phones and you're cooking dinner for each other every night and sharing stories all day on the boats, everybody's just focused on being with these people in this place. And I think it just brings out the best in everyone, and you end up with these friendships that last way beyond the end of your trip.
Oh, that was a great story. That was so touching.
Such a great story. And Sienna's husband, Nat, came on a GCY trip in 2019 as a scientist. And Kat Coe is an incredible scientist and has helped us for a number of years. And so it's just so great to, think about youth helping to collect data that is going to help inform scientists in better ways to manage these amazing places.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just the point that that Sienna made about connections.
So important.
Right now, connections are so important, but on trips like the ones through Grand Canyon Youth, those connections are formed that can be lifelong.
It's so true. It was a good story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that there are a few sponsors that I want to thank. Again, Alliance Bank of Arizona and Babbitt's Backcountry Outfitters. Thanks for your support. And we wanted to tell you another way that you could potentially give. And did you know that this year, only this year, there is a $300 universal charitable contribution deduction, whether or not you itemize your taxes. And if you make this $300 donation before December 31st this year, you can get that tax benefit. So you need to ask your tax advisor, though, for some more information.
But that applies likely to people who might want to donate tonight, right now?
It could apply to people that want to donate tonight. In fact, we have a handy $300 button.
Ooh.
Just so people can do that if they would like.
That's so convenient, because I think our most recent update was that beep, beep, We raised another $300 plus $335 over that story. I think we got to load the boat.
I think we do. So we have a total right now of $7,635. Let's load the boat. Dun, dun, dun. Woo! Getting there. Excellent. Are you ready for another story?
Yeah. Yeah, I am.
I think I am too.
Let's go there.
All right. Sounds good.
Krista Sadler has been living and working on and madly in love with the Colorado River in Grand Canyon for 34 years. She is a geologist, paleontologist, author, educator, and wilderness guide in many places around the world. But for her, nothing beats the Grand Canyon.
Hi, my name is Krista Sadler, and I have been a river guide in the Grand Canyon for almost 35 years now, which is kind of crazy to me. Welcome to the Grand Canyon Youth annual fundraiser. You can guess that I am not at home right now. Well, I am actually at home. This is my home. I'm sitting here at Little Nankoweap Camp on the Colorado River. I actually got here by a backpacking trip, not by a river trip this time. And I want to tell you a story about feeling a little bit on a river trip like we got kicked out of paradise. But then we got let back in, or we let ourselves back in. And I wanted to tell you this story because it kind of feels like we all got kicked out of paradise a little bit this year with the pandemic. I know that you haven't been able to be on the river, and I wasn't able to get on the river because none of my trips were able to go. So I wanted to tell you this story. So it was 2001, and it was September of 2001. We were on a 16-day river trip, and we were hiking all day on September 11th. We were hiking on doing the up to Pete's Creek, across Surprise Valley, and down Deer Creek. And then we camped, and the next day we went really far downstream. We passed up Havasu, and we just floated along, and it was really beautiful. We were watching bighorn sheep everywhere, and a couple people noticed that there weren't any planes in the sky. Usually we see some planes flying overhead, and we didn't really think much of it. Maybe we just missed them. But that night we were at National Camp, Upper National Camp, and we were cooking dinner, and all our folks were bathing and doing what they do. And there was another trip camped downstream from us, and they came up and they said, "Did you guys hear what happened in New York?" And we said, "No, we didn't hear anything. We passed Havasu. We haven't seen anyone." And they told us what had happened in New York with the planes flying into the World Trade Center. And at that time, nobody knew anything. There were all kinds of horrible estimates of thousands and thousands and thousands of people dead. And it was just this big unknown. And we just felt so lost down there in the canyon. And all of the guides, we stood around and we were talking. We thought, what do we tell our people? How can we tell them that this has happened out there and ruin their trip? And some said, well, maybe we should just wait and tell them, pretend that we didn't know at all, and we'll tell them when we get to the takeout in 4 or 5 days. We thought, okay, we can do that. And then I thought, how do we do that? How do we pretend that we don't know this has happened while we're down here in this beautiful place? So I thought about it all night. I was leading the trip, and I thought about it all night. I called the office. I called my boss. And we talked a little bit, and we did find out that there was one woman on our trip whose brother had been in the World Trade Center and was not being heard from. And there was another woman on our trip who had family in New York City, and all the people on our trip who had friends in New York City. And we thought, we can't not let them know. So I was up probably all night, and I really felt like I had been kicked out of paradise because, when you're down here for 2 weeks or 16 days or 18 days, this is the real world, and everything that's going on out there just goes away. So in the morning, I thought, okay, we're going to tell everyone. But we all just moved really slowly. And we had this amazing little thunderstorm. The sky just turned violet, and these incredible clouds with orange and gold tinged around the edge. And there was thunder and lightning and a little rainstorm. And then this rainbow kind of stitched all the clouds together at one time. It was just amazing. And I thought, okay, this is a sign that we need to talk to people. So I called the people who were most affected first, and I talked to them individually and told them what had happened and that their families were trying to get in touch with them. And then I called the group around, and we all stood in a circle. And, you know, we've been together for 12, 13 days by now, so we're really feeling like a family. And I told them what happened. And as I told them, I can kind of feel it right now. I'm starting to cry a little bit. But as I told them, I could just see the weight of the world come down on their shoulders, and people started crying, and people kind of sagged against each other. And I just said to everyone, I said, just go off by yourselves and be by yourselves as long as you need to. And everybody just took off, and they left in little groups, you know, couples or individuals or little groups of 3, and they left, and they spent a couple of hours just sitting by the river and watching the river go by. And I gave everyone who wanted it the satellite phone so they could call their families and call their friends. And then we decided that what we would do is just continue downstream, but just do it really slowly. And so we left, and we went to another place called Fern Glen. Hopefully you'll get to go there sometime soon. And we climbed up into this big, beautiful silver limestone bowl with dripping water and little seeps and springs. And we sat up there, and we watched butterflies float by, and we were still really silent, and we weren't really talking to each other very much. And it just felt really strange. I thought, how is this going to work? The woman whose brother was killed at the Trade Center, they were going to send a helicopter for her as soon as the helicopters started flying again. And we thought, oh my gosh, how is it going to be when somebody leaves this trip now? We came back out of Fern Glen, and we just said, okay, we're going to have lunch, and we're going to start playing. And so we started playing tag. And this is a whole bunch of old people playing tag. So you got to understand, it was not really pretty, but we had so much fun. And we started playing tag, and we started playing wiffle ball, and we started wrestling with each other on the beach. We had lunch, and we went downstream, and we got to our camp, which was just a few miles downstream. We didn't really want to go very far. And it was this beautiful, warm, mid-September day, and everybody was bathing and splashing in the river. And that night, we all sat around in a circle, and the woman whose brother had been killed in the World Trade Center said, I'm not going to leave because this is my family, and I want to stay here for the whole trip. And that night, when I was lying on my boat in bed, looking up at the sky and watching the stars, and I just realized that these trips are paradise for so many reasons, because it's paradise. It's the most beautiful place in the world. But they're also paradise because of what we do for each other. And we become a family down here, and we take care of each other. And that's one of the most beautiful things that happens on these river trips. And we need places like this. I really realized that we need places like this so much so that our souls can recover when horrible things happen in the other world. So what I would say to all of you is take care of each other. And the river will be here when you come back. And you can come back down here and play and laugh and have a wonderful time with all of your new family that you meet on the river. So thanks a lot. Stay safe and have a wonderful fall. Bye.
I love GCY because they made me who I am today. If it wasn't for them, I would still be an insecure kid with a lack of confidence. I love GCY because they introduced me to a community filled with amazing individuals and amazing places to explore. Ever since my first river trip, I have had this connection with the river. I can still remember my feet and hands in the cold sand, the sound of the water crashing into things, and the beautiful dark night sky filled with stars and the moon. I love GCY because they showed me I can be whoever I want to be. I love Grand Canyon Youth because they are my family.
That's what it's about right there, Emma.
I get weepy. I love Oscar. He's amazing,
Yeah.
amazing young man.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Clearly, he's had a great impact on him from Grand Canyon Youth, and seems like he's an incredible kiddo. And then Krista's story
Oh.
also, just going in, dropping into a river trip on one end and coming out on another, with the world having changed. I think about people who might be on Grand Canyon trips right now during this historic moment. But the message of that story wasn't just about change in the world, it was about connection,
Absolutely.
right? We've got people watching all over the world, in fact, and we'd love for those of you watching right now, just to pop into the chat and let us know where you're watching from. Usually this is just a Flagstaff event.
That's
right?
true.
You'd have to haul yourself all the way to the Coconino Center for the Arts in Flagstaff
On a snowy night.
In early November to take part in this. But now you're taking part of it from wherever you are. Maybe you want to just throw in the chat where you're zooming in from. We'd love to know. We'd also, if you want to share, we'd like to know if you're an alumni and do you think you've been on the trip in Grand Canyon Youth's earliest stages. Another way of saying that is you're an elder states person. Or if you think we have somebody watching from Seattle.
Hi, Jen.
Hey, Jen. Maybe you're a Grand Canyon Youth alumni who thinks you've been on the most recent trip, maybe a trip in 2019. We've got folks right here.
I just
in
wanted to
Flagstaff.
say hi to everyone who
Yeah.
pops up. Shocking. I know.
The
Oh, hey, Caleb. That's an alumni. Sorry.
The point is, Grand Canyon Youth is about community, about creating community, and the community that you're a part of right now, just watching from home, that you're connected to a greater network of caring folks, of folks who've connected over adventure and over the river.
So true. Yay. It's so weird. Like one of the things I was worried about is like I wouldn't feel that connection, but just seeing the names of people pop up on the screen and that sort of thing, it just kind of brings it home. So
Absolutely.
It's good. So thanks so much for tuning in to this great night of storytelling.
I think there's been some founders tuning in too.
Yes. Shout out to John Hirsch, who just donated from Alaska. Thanks so much. John is one of our founders of Grand Canyon Youth. So thanks.
Awesome. We have a donation update.
Donation update. Should we load the boat?
Absolutely, we should.
All right. And while you're getting that, I'm going to do a thank you to a few of our sponsors so I don't forget in all of my getting excited and connecting to community. We would like to thank Benefit and Financial Strategies, Mountain View Pediatrics, Wildland Trekking, and a shout out to Brightside Bookshop here in Flagstaff for some storyteller gifts. Thanks so much. And here's where we are. Since the last update, we have raised an additional $510, which brings our grand total to $8,145. We're getting close. Thank you all so much.
Folks, I think we can make it by the end of the night. Remember, that goal is $10,000, and we're nearing in on it. Is it time for our next story?
I think it might be time for our next story.
All right.
I gotta say, this is one of my favorite intros, so here we go. I have the pleasure of introducing the Right Reverend Robbie Record, the First Church of the Little Boats, who lives in Flagstaff and wanders around the West with his wife, Kate. He is the edutainment coordinator for the Kachina Peaks Avalanche Center, and he summers in the Grand Canyon, rowing small boats through big rapids and taking long strolls to nap in the shade. Robbie Record.
There's a poster hanging in my garage, tattered corners and water stained, that I acquired about 15 years ago. It originally hung in the gear room at Knowles Rocky Mountain in Lander, Wyoming. A remodel of the space saw a pile of mementos, which had lost their significance to most, but to this child of nostalgia and adventure, they were a treasure trove. They were ads from 90s ski magazines that had fueled my desire to learn the secret behind the smiles of those returning from the mountains. There were shots of huge whitewater with the paddle blade and helmet, the only indication of a kayaker taking on the tempest. I imagine myself in these images, dancing with the elements and hoping I don't get my toes stepped on in the waltz, or even worse, an injury in the mosh pit. From this pile of posters, I selected 3 to hang in my cabin at the Knowles River Base in Vernal, Utah. After a few years, I wasn't spending as much time in Utah, and the cabin passed to new residents. A buddy and his girlfriend moved in, and he was informed that she would not have posters on the wall. Instead, they would have art. Passing through town after the new couple had taken over the cabin, I picked up a rug and a couple of other items I had left. On this pile were the posters that had been on the walls. There was a part of me that was comforted by their sight. I didn't even need to look at them to know the drop of water coming off the paddle, catching the light just so, and creating a prism and arcing the light into a rainbow. I drove home to Idaho, and in my cabin at the base of Teton Pass, the posters were again in a home where visitors would appreciate the effort to capture an image mid-adventure, as well as the aesthetics of a practitioner of the adventure arts getting after it. Graduated from bachelorhood and 6 months a year of winter, I now make my home in Flagstaff, guiding the Grand Canyon. Cabins I've called home over the years have transitioned into a house with my wife, with art on the walls. There are a couple of posters too. They are framed and have less emphasis on the athletic side of adventure. The poster in the garage, I suppose, only hits at the athletic side as well. I mentioned that the corners are ragged from numerous thumbtacks, and there are water stains from time it's been hanging on the inside of the door of a shed that may have been left unlatched a time or two. It is an image from an expedition to the Charkusa Valley in Pakistan. Attached with a puzzle of webbing, carabiners, and hardware to a cliff and glazed with snow is a portaledge. As the name implies, a portaledge is a portable ledge used by big wall climbers to bivvy or make a camp on a rock face. It's an offset pyramid tarp tent with a tubular aluminum base frame and a zipper opening from the apex down one face. The zipper is part way down, and an unshaven face crowned with a wool hat is framed in the opening. Other than the opening, the portaledge is caked with snow. And though there are clouds in the sky, they appear spent of most moisture. This admixture of fragments from the image are breadcrumbs of a tale of a most adventurous night not soon to be forgotten. I am reminded of nights of full tilt adventure, like the night at Lower Tuckup, when the blanket of darkness and driving rain was lifted for microseconds in the flash of lightning to reveal uncountable spouts of water cascading from the cliffs above that soon caused us to scramble and move tents, and finding groovers floating in pools, and finally fitful sleep and waking to dawn's light revealing arroyos through what was a chair circle. Or of the nights on the Noatak River in Alaska's Brooks Range, where again the clouds relieved themselves of moisture in a week-long deluge, driving us from a camp 300 feet from what was shore and was now a faint memory, and launching our folded canoes onto a dragon's back of hydrologic mayhem for 2 miles before finding a bar perched high above the river, where we spent the next 4 days waiting for water to subside to a manageable level. In the poster on the wall of my garage that does not quite fit even for framing to make its way into my house, that shows an alpine face with a ridiculously affixed sleeping convenience. That signs point to has endured a night that, if any sleep was had, was most surely fitful. And bearing witness framed in the tense opening are a pair of eyes cast toward the skies, containing the spent appearing clouds, though the sun is still hidden. The meticulously tied knots and hardware upon which life was entrusted now fused in snow and ice, and a near vertical face far past the angle of repose, yet tenuously holding its load of snow. Absorbing all of this, the eyes and face reveal, instead of reluctance or down spirits, a look of anxious optimism, skeptical of the circumstances, but resolved to carry on with reason. The reason of someone who would actively seek out the above described scenario by traveling halfway around the world with a mountain of gear and lugging it into a remote corner 15,000 feet above sea level, and then up a cliff face, only to then reverse the whole process and return home emaciated, broke, and craving the next adventure. Most would look at this certain state of circumstances and initiate the reversal, retreat. This face, though, is studious, expectant, assessing and finding the odds probable. The most challenging grades of the adventure arts should only be tried by teams of experts under manageable conditions after consideration of likelihood and consequences. Manageable conditions is the slide rule of adventure. One person whistles in the rain and checks out rainbows, while others retreat to inside spaces and refuge from the elements. Recap. We have a well-worn poster showing a scene of people engaged in an absurd quest in questionable conditions, looking as if their pursuit isn't quite rational, and instead looking for cracks in the absurdity from which they can wring a self-defined adventure. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and I've already used over 1,100 trying to distill the frame captured over 20 years ago, printed on cheap paper, and witnessing and inspiring adventurers. The gear manufacturer whose brand logo is in the corner was at the cutting edge of design way back, and has since become a distant memory. Built by hardcore, sold to investors, dissolved by corporations. The message across the bottom of the poster, though, is as timeless as the image of a person standing resolute in the face of odds that are odd, and not really wanting it any other way. That simple message is, live close to your dreams. And that reminds me of a saying from my father: be careful what you ask for. You just might get it.
Hi, my name is Allison Botke, and I'm a teacher at Mount Eldon Middle School. How I got involved with GCY is because of our Alpine program. Alpine is an outdoor leadership program at Mount Eldon Middle School, and they integrate everything outdoors in the Colorado Plateau in all subjects. At the end of the year, they then have a big river trip, and I've been able to be a chaperone on each of the 6th graders. They did Glen Canyon, spent the night at Horseshoe Bend, 7th graders, the San Juan River, and 8th graders, Diamond Down. And GCY, they make river trips amazing, memorable, and so much fun. That's why I love GCY.
My name is Nate. I've been a GCY alumni for the past 6 years. My favorite part about GCY trips is the amount of fun you can have when you're out of your comfort zone and the amount of memories you gain from this trip.
Oh, well, this is a great story. I love the poeticness.
He's a great writer.
Jeez, that blew me away. It made me wonder, though, Emma, why did you choose stories for this fundraiser, for this event?
Well, I think we've done a couple of story events in the past, and something that just resonates for me about stories is that they're kind of like one of the purest forms of connecting with people. And when you're out on the river, maybe sitting around a campfire or even just sitting around, in the, chair circle, listening to the river going by and just sharing stories without your phone or the computer or any of the things that we're relying on so much right now. And I just think that stories really do connect us, and they're just such an important way to, both remember and help us to question things and to explore new ideas.
I know I've been there before in the chair circle, talking with new and old friends about all sorts of different things. I'm curious if you all out there in our virtual chair circle, if any alumni continue to keep up with their other alumni friends. If you still have a connection with a friend that you met on a GCY trip, why don't you jump into the chat and let us know? It'd be really cool to see some names pop up of connections that are still out there and that continue on to this day. I love the connections that outdoor activities and river trips especially can make.
Absolutely. And while we're talking about community, it takes such a big community to make Grand Canyon Youth what it is, and also, all of our different communities that we serve and support. And one of those communities that is really important and valuable to Grand Canyon Youth is our field staff, our guides and drivers. They are someone else. They are another group who, had the rug pulled out from under them, for lack of a better way of talking about it, at the beginning of this pandemic. And we've just missed them, and it's been great to connect over Zoom and those kinds of things. But I just can't wait until we can be back in this space, loading boats and getting prepared for trips. And just missing having them around. So I hope, field staff, that you are all doing well and staying healthy and connected.
That's right. A lot of talk about the youth, because that's really what the organization is about at its core. But we know field staff, warehouse staff, it takes all those people to make those trips happen for the youth. So, and
the teachers, like the teachers that we heard from Allison Bodke, who's an amazing art teacher, and all of the teachers and administrators and coordinators that contribute to making a big impact for young people, for sure.
That's right. Well, we've got an update on our fundraising.
We efforts. Do. You want to give us the update, Garrison?
I'm high-siding to tell you. Since our last update, y'all have contributed $1,380, bringing our total to a whopping $9,525, folks. We're almost there. We're so close. And we've got one more story for y'all.
I can't believe
to make it happen.
It's going by so quickly.
That's
We've
right.
been prepared. It's going by so quickly, but I've loved the stories and love spending time with you. And we've got one more story.
Well, before we get to that, let's load the boat.
We forgot. We can't forget to load the boat.
Let's thank some sponsors, and then we'll get to that story.
The sponsors. Oh, Garrison, thank you for keeping me on track.
I'll load this one.
You love this one. I'll read some sponsors. We've got some sponsors to thank: Knackered Pepsi, National Bank of Arizona, and NARBA Institute. Thank you so much. And we are so close to our goal. Thank you all so much. I think I was overwhelmed by that potentially.
Well, I'm just gonna intro our last storyteller of the night, and then we want to get back together one final time to send y'all off. Annette McGivney is an award-winning author, journalist, and longtime Southwest editor for Backpacker magazine. In addition to Backpacker, her writing appears regularly in Outside, Arizona Highways, and The Guardian. McGivney's latest book, Pure Land, won the National Outdoor Book Award in 2018. She also founded Grand Canyon Youth's Healing Lands Project, which takes child survivors of family violence on clinically supported wilderness trips. Here's Annette.
Hello. The story I'm going to tell tonight or whenever you happen to be watching this, is about a Backpacker Magazine Editor's Choice trip that happened in 2001. So every year, Backpacker Magazine editors test gear on a trip for the Editor's Choice Awards. And I've been an editor for Backpacker since 1996. So a really long time. I've been on a lot of trips. Some trips are better than others. This one was pretty crazy, probably the craziest of any that I had ever been on. And so the thing with these trips is that we try to test the gear in a way that really pushes it, that tries to show that if this sleeping bag is rated to 20 degrees, we actually were in 20-degree weather, or whatever the limits of that gear is. And so we had kind of this saying from one of the editors that we call full conditions. And it's like, if we can get to a place where we're in full conditions with that gear, and we feel like we've fully tested it. So that's always kind of the goal. The problem with that is that if you get past full conditions and you're in the wilderness, you're in trouble. So in this situation, on this trip, we got way past full conditions. So the trip was to the Lost Coast in Northern California, which is a wilderness area along the coastline. It's beautiful. The issue with our trip was that it was in late November because we had a deadline to meet with this gear testing story. And so the trip had to be in late November. And we had to test certain types of gear that had come up as potential candidates for the Editor's Choice Awards. And so we couldn't really say, well, we're going to be hiking this coastal trail in possibly winter conditions. We better take certain types of gear. We were actually taking gear that we needed to test for potential Editor Choice Awards. So the gear we were taking in late November on this blustery coastal trail was down sleeping bags. We were testing those. We were testing teepee tents, very high profile shelters. We were testing these new little backpacking stoves where you put little twigs in for fuel. So we were testing like wood burning camp stoves. And one editor was actually testing ultralight gear where his poncho was also a tarp. So his rain gear was a poncho and his shelter was also a tarp, and no tent. And so anyway, there was that. And so we set out. There were 7 editors. Typical of back then, there were 2 women, me and another editor named Gina. And then the other 4 editors were John Dorn, John Harlan, Mike Lanza, and Dennis Lewan, and Steve Howe. So we were field editors, we were executive editors, kind of like a whole team. And we'd done trips together before. We all each had our personalities. The spectrum was like on one side were editors that really wanted to push it in terms of challenge with their gear and conditions and kind of potentially get in a dangerous situation. And there were others that like to play it safe and be smart. And I definitely kind of fit in the be smart, be safe category. Steve Howe was very much a researcher and liked to be very pragmatic. So he was from the very beginning saying, why are we taking down bags on a trip on a coastal trail? But anyway, we set out, and the first day was beautiful, sunny skies, beautiful coastline, the waves, a wilderness beach. Anyone who's hiked on a wilderness beach trail, it's really spectacular. So there we're just trekking along with our gear, and we come upon this seal that's like laying in the sand and is obviously very sick and couldn't move. And we all just stood around and it was like, oh, this is sad, the poor seal. And we're looking down, and John Harlan says, I think we should kill it. And we all like, what? And he was serious. He was like, this seal is sick. We should do a mercy killing. And we were like, well, how and why? And he said, we would just club it. And so we all kind of laughed it off. And fortunately, he did not club the seal. And we just hiked on. But that was sort of, we joked like that was a bad omen. And then others joked, man, if any of us falls behind, we know what Harlan's going to do to us. So it's like, haha. So the next morning, we woke up from our TP tents in our down bags, and it was like hurricane force winds. The teepees were folding in half. Water was blowing in underneath and making the bags wet. And it was really bad conditions. And so some in the group were like, we should turn around. This is not going to work out. And then others said, well, no, let's push on. We can find a high route instead of going along the coast. And so they scouted it out, and there's like, no, there's no high route. Let's just, make a run for it. Like, we're going to go around these rocky headlands, and then, the weather will clear up, and let's just go for it. So kind of that segment of our hiking group like took over, and the ones that were the pragmatists or, were like kind of, we should be more cautious, took a back seat. So there we start hiking around these headlands, and there was a big storm surge. So we're, going in with our gear is already wet, and we're hiking, and these waves are like pinning us up against the cliffs. And it was raining so hard, and plus the surf, the waves that were hitting us. Our waterproof breathable jackets that we were also testing were failing. Like, it was going through the pores of the waterproof breathable jackets. So we were wet underneath. We had wet gear. And I was starting to think, this isn't funny anymore. Like, this is potentially, if someone got hurt as we were hiking over those sharp rocks on the headlands, something really bad could happen. And so then I saw like a rock land almost hit the head of Mike Lanza. And, if he would have been hit in the head, what would we have done? It's like an emergency situation. So some people in the group were like, this is stupid. Like, we are beyond full conditions. Like, this is stupidity. And we were worried. And so fortunately we made it around the headlands, and we got to this high area where the wind was like blowing so hard that we were like almost falling down, and it was really hard to stand. Certainly you could never pitch a teepee tent in that type of situation. And so we found this cabin. It was like, is that a cabin up there on the hill? And it was. And so we went up to this cabin and stood like in the lee of the cabin just so we could read a map and kind of look at our options. And some people were getting hypothermic, like we were all shivering. We had wet gear, and so Steve Howe just turned the knob of the cabin, and the door opened, and I was like, I'm going in. I don't care what you guys do. I'm going in this cabin. And I went in, and then Steve and Mike and Gina followed me, and we're like, wow, like, we're out of the wind, we're out of the rain. This is great. And then the others, Dennis and the two Johns, were like, what are you guys doing? You can't go in a cabin. That's cheating. What about our gear testing? Like, this is like not backpacker editor standards to like be cheating in a cabin. And we were like, we don't care. Like, we're hypothermic. And anyway, so it was a funny thing where we three of us decided we're gonna just spend the night in this cabin, and then the other editors were like, well, we're not cheaters, we're gonna set up our teepee tents and stick it out. And so they actually set up their tents in the lee of the cabin, because there's no way they could have pitched it out there in the exposed bluff area. And then so we called ourselves the insiders. The insiders were sitting in this cabin, like looking out this beautiful picture window, and as the like just hurricane force winds and rain was just pelting down, and we like made ourselves tea, and we were sipping our tea, and we watched the other editors like scurrying around looking for wood for their little stoves. And then they also were drying out their gear on the porch of the cabin. So there was this whole debate about who was cheating, and we insisted they were cheating because they were using the cabin to dry out their gear. But that's, like up for debate. And so then the next morning, it was a beautiful sunny day. There was a rainbow, and the storm had passed. But we always joked about the outcome of the trip, like was, with gear testing and who made the right decision about going in the cabin or not. And as we were like, we had to hitch a ride once we got to the end of the trail to get back to our cars. We hitched a ride, and we were all sitting in the back of this pickup. And Dennis looked at me and he's like, "That was so fun." And I thought, wow, because I thought we got really lucky, and it was beautiful and it was a challenging experience. But my takeaway from that was, the moral of this story is, be careful when you do trips about who you go with. Not only what gear you take the right gear, but also make sure that your idea of fun is the same as other people on the trip, because some people want to push it farther than maybe you do, or maybe you want to push it farther and they don't. But anyway, we always joke about getting clubbed in the head by John Harlan, and also whether that Lost Coast trip was fun or not. So that's up for debate depending on who you talk to. And thanks for listening to my story.
Hi, my name is Camila, and I'm 18. I'm in Oregon now, and one of my favorite Grand Canyon youth memories that I wanted to share with you happened last summer. I was on a full San Juan trip through my school, and we had a layover day at Chinle, and we did this really long hike in Chinle, and it ended up being what you would traditionally describe as probably like the worst possible conditions. Like, it was absolutely pouring rain. It was raining the night before too, so there's all this mud accumulated, and it was like hiking with weights on your shoes, and theoretically it should have been terrible, but it was so fun, and it felt like we were on this magical National Geographic quest or something like that. And one of the reasons I like that story so much, other than just it being really fun and cool to be able to tell people that you hiked 11 miles in the rain, is because I think it really emphasizes what's so important about GCY. And I think one of the values of GCY is that it teaches us to take things that are supposed to be bad and make them into incredible experiences, and experiences that we can really learn from and draw from.
All right. We did it. We made it.
We made it.
Those are our stories tonight. And, before we wrap up, Annette is exactly right that trips are made by the people who are on them. You can go on a trip of with brand new people, groups like the Breakfast Club coming together. That's what my first trip with Grand Canyon Youth was like, where we had a group of kids that didn't seem to match up together, and by the end of it, what they defined as fun, the relationships that they built had completely transformed. It was an amazing thing to watch.
Oh, that makes me miss the river and community. So it's so great that we got to be in community with you tonight. And I think we have some exciting news, do we not?
Exciting fundraising news, folks. I'm so happy to tell you that tonight, with your help, we have surpassed our fundraising goal. Over the last break, y'all donated $1,275, and we have our low budget confetti. I swear, none of your donations were being used for this confetti. This is all scrap paper. A total fundraise tonight, $10,800.
Get on your feet, Garrison.
Social distance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you so much, folks, for helping Grand Canyon Youth meet our goal tonight. Amazing.
Exceed our goal.
Exceed.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Before we close, just a few thank yous and shout outs. First of all, Will Lytle, thanks for donating. Great to see you. I would love to thank our sponsors again so much for the event. It meant a lot to try this new thing. I really want to give a shout out to John Profster behind the camera, and Dina Barnice, who has been producing this show. Wow, we have never done anything like this, and it was so great to be in their capable hands. And Garrison, it's been a pleasure and so much fun to be with you. You helped us to get out of our comfort zone and try something new, which is what we do here at GCY. So thank you so much.
So appreciative to be a part of it.
Yay.
It's really an amazing organization, and I'm glad to spend the night with y'all.
Excellent. If you want to be a storyteller at a future event, whether it is in person or virtual, remains to be seen. Please go ahead and send an email to info@gcyouth.org, and we'll get you on the list for next year. And before we totally close out for the night, other than heaps and heaps and heaps of gratitude, for any youth that's watching out there, we miss you. We miss you a lot. We hope that you're staying safe, getting outside whenever you can, and just know that we love and appreciate you and can't wait to connect with you out on the river in the future. And the rivers are going to be there, and the water will be flowing, and there will be adventures aplenty to be had. So we look forward to that. And thank you so much to all of the viewers, all of the donors, the board, the staff, just everyone. Just
The
really appreciate it.
sponsors.
The sponsors. Thank the sponsors. And yeah, please have a great night. Stay safe.
Take care of each other.
Take care of each other. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.